Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
Good evening and welcome on this Tuesday night to Teach Talk Radio. I hope everyone had a lovely Easter. We will be doing the Key Stage 2 grammar debate with Lucy, who'll be on any moment, and just like that she pops on up. So I hope everyone had a lovely Easter. I've seen Lucy's amazing hot cross buns and they look incredible, and I'm very jealous of her Easter. And I hope everyone else had a lovely break as well.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening to you, Hannah. Thank you for that introduction. And thank you for telling me what day it is, because I have absolutely no idea. Even though I normally broadcast on a Tuesday, it's kind of got to a bit like that weird in-betweeny bit between Christmas and New Year. I kind of have I think, been on holiday for long enough now that it sort of doesn't matter, but I also need to start considering the fact that I do have to go back at some point. But for now, I mean, it's actually been quite nice to be on holiday. I'm actually in the UK at the moment. For those of you who listen in regularly to me, you will know that I normally broadcast from sunny Portugal, but I decided to pop home for a bit to be looked after by mum and dad. Had a bit of a rough end to term. I think it's another one of those years where it has been just tough for all involved, I think. I mean, for varying reasons, and certainly in the wake of COVID, we have had a difficult old time, it seems. But I think there is a lovely aspect to going home, and without fail, of course, we revert to complete kind of teenagedom, or at least I know I do. I mean, not entirely. I do my laundry and I make my bed, which is maybe a bit of a change from when I was a teenager, but I certainly feel mentally lighter but physically heavier, because I do get fed very well at home. So yeah, all good from over here, which is nice. And I know I normally do a kind of a nice little intro for you, but because I've sort of been at home doing very little, I kind of feel I shouldn't really bore you with that. I mean, I live in sort of I'm from a kind of sort of nice sort of leafy part of the south of England, and it's very quaint, it's very nice. I mean, there's nothing really much else to say about it, which is probably why I left in the first place. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being here. It's quite nice to kind of certainly go for runs and things in places you're familiar with. But I miss the weather in Portugal. It's actually raining, and those of you who've been tuned into the news or to the weather will know there's actually been a lot of flooding. I think the weather actually has been better here for once, which is an extraordinary revelation. But there you go. Anyway, I'm not going to prattle on for too long. Instead, I'm going to introduce first what we are talking about, and secondly, my lovely guest, who is also another Lucy, which is very nice for me. It's the author Lucy Strange, who I think has the best name for an author, and I'm mildly jealous. But we are going to be talking a lot about and I've labelled this show the Key Stage 2 grammar debate. And that sort of arose from the idea, and I'm sure those of you who've listened to me before have heard me maybe bang on is a bit disingenuous to myself, but talk a lot about my feelings towards grammar teaching, certainly in Key Stage 2, and sort of what I feel is relevant and what's not. And what I wanted to unpack a little bit more this evening was whether the grammar we are teaching, are we teaching in too much detail, not enough detail? And in teaching sort of spelling, punctuation and grammar, are we actually destroying a child's love for writing? Are we going too far? And I know there are people that sit on both sides of this debate. And before I get Lucy on in a moment, what I should let you know is that we're actually going to start, and Lucy is aware of this, we're actually going to start with a grammar quiz. And this is something that I wrote myself, and I confess some of the answers I had to look up. So we'll see how that goes in a moment. But before we proceed any further, I'm glad to see that Lucy is here and raring to go. Good evening to you, Lucy. You made it.
Hello. I'm here. I'm hoping. Is the sound all right? I'm in my writing shed, and the rain is thundering on the roof. Yes. Am I coming over loud and clear?
You are, absolutely. You've also just painted a
Okay.
lovely sort of romantic image. And I, and I remember when I spoke to you the other day, I said I was very jealous that you have what you have dubbed a writing shed. I think that's
Yeah.
many people's dreams, and I know that certainly book lovers on well-known social media apps. They sort of romanticize the idea of becoming authors themselves, and I know a lot of people sort of talk about, oh, I'd love a little shed at the bottom of the garden. So I think for many, you
Yeah.
are perhaps living the dream. But
Living the dream. But the reality is rain thundering thundering on the roof. And I'm walking down a very boggy garden to get here. So, but yeah, it is. Other than that, it is pretty cool. I do love it. It's my sanctuary.
oh, I am a little bit jealous, I have to say. But so before we proceed any further, I feel you should introduce yourself in a little bit more detail, so we can find out a little bit more about you.
Oh, well, hello, everyone. My name's Lucy Strange. I'm a children's author, and I'm also a teacher. I was 15 years a secondary school English teacher, and I've done a bit of teaching at tertiary level as well. I've done some supervising on creative writing MAs and that sort of thing. And it's just and I have a lot of teacher friends in real life and on Twitter, and I'm very interested in the grammar debate, and so I thought we could have an evening thrashing it through, Lucy. I thought that would be fun.
Yeah, and I think we're going to do quite well with this. Now, you are aware, and actually, I believe this was your idea, Lucy,
Was
to
it?
I don't know. I think you maybe sort of didn't think I would get quite so excited about this idea. But so what I have done to start us off this evening, and those of you listening in, or indeed listening back on any or many of the podcast platforms that exist out there, do play along yourselves. I will confess, yes, I am also a primary teacher. And a lot of these things I had to, and I don't know if it's just holiday brain or the fact that I never seem to really retain a lot of this. So, if you are sitting there going, I've got absolutely no idea what this woman is talking about, then please don't despair, because when I ran this quiz past members of my family, and I will share some of the responses with you towards the end of this. Some of them, unfortunately, are not suitable for broadcast, but this is we are before the watershed, and this is I say a family show, but it is we subscribe to keeping it above board. So
Excellent. But hang on. So let me get this right. You created the quiz yourself,
I did.
but you still struggled with some of the answers.
I put it this way. I double checked my answers because, and maybe this is my own sort of teaching self-esteem coming through here, but also I wanted to be sure. And even now I'm starting to think, oh gosh. I also did run it by the entire Teachers Talk Radio exec, of which two members did very well.
Mm.
And Tom Rogers, cough cough, has yet to come back to me on it, but I'm sure he will, or he'll be playing along in the background right now. I can see Hannah's laughing as well. So there's only 5 questions because I thought.
All right. Do I need a pen and paper? Do we need pen and paper for this?
You can do, but I will repeat. This is not under test conditions.
I'm not. I'm getting prepared.
And all these questions that I have created without the help of ChatGPT or anything like that, are based on the SPAG requirements for years 3 to 6. So I've left Key Stage 1 out of this for the moment and purely focused on Key Stage 2. So first question.
Do you want me to say my answers, or do you want me to write them down? I should write them down, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can go through as we go because I feel
We'll go
otherwise.
through.
Yeah,
Well, you just tell me. I don't want to spoil it for other people, and I don't want to confuse other people by getting things horribly wrong, you see. So just tell me when you want my answers, Lucy.
I will do. I mean, maybe we do it question by question, otherwise people are not
Okay.
going to remember. And it is, it's an evening. I don't want to ruin people's fun too much.
No.
This is, I mean, this is my vain attempt into making grammar shows entertaining, but I think we can do it. I really do.
Okay.
So,
No, I have faith. Ready? Let's go.
are you ready?
I'm ready.
So number one. Okay. So although I was scared, I managed to cross the bridge. What is the subordinate clause in this sentence?
Okay.
Do you need that repeating?
Yeah. No, I think I'm all right with that one.
Okay, and what did you come up with for that one then?
So I believe, Lucy, that the first clause of that sentence is subordinate. The although I was scared, because it doesn't have the main verb in it.
Okay, and the sort of Miss N, because I am Miss Neuburger to my students. So the Miss N bonus, which I often do in class. So I'm really sort of treating this like a lesson here. What is the difference between a main clause and a subordinate clause?
Yeah, so the main clause is the main thing. This is how I would have taught it. The main thing that's happening in the sentence, and without that bit, it's not a full sentence. But a main clause can stand on its own 2 feet and be a sentence on its own. If it wants to be, it can.
Absolutely spot on. And the subordinate bit doesn't really make
Just
sense on its own.
giving us an extra bit of information. Yeah.
Yes. Some would say the although bit doesn't count because it's technically a conjunction, I believe.
But that's part of. See, this is where it gets confusing, doesn't it? Because
already.
grammar things can be 2 things at once. It can be 2 things. It can be. It can be. It's starting with a conjunction that is part of a subordinate clause. Yeah.
Absolutely. So
I would say.
And of course, you can flip that sentence round, or kind of with this one. It's a little bit fiddly. So I managed to cross the bridge, even though I was scared. I would probably say.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's number one. I think you did pretty well there. So
I'm giving myself a tick. Yeah. 100%. 100% so far. So I think let's quit while we're ahead. We'll just we'll call it a day there. That's it. That's done.
Oh, are you sure you don't want to carry on?
Oh no, go on then.
Okay, so the next one, what is now? This question is a fun one for me, and I put this in because I didn't know what this was until I was 26 years of age and teacher training. So, what is a fronted
not
adverbial?
a fronted adverbial?
Can you give an example?
Is that actually the question?
Yeah.
What is a fronted adverbial, and can I give an example?
Yeah.
Okay, so a fronted adverbial, not an affronted one, not an offended adverbial. A fronted adverbial, it comes at the beginning of a sentence and it tells you how or when the main part of the sentence happened, and it's just So it could be sort of hurrying as fast as I could, I made my way to the chip shop or something.
What is the piece of punctuation that goes directly after a fronted adverbial?
I need to put a comma there, miss.
You do.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And there's a hideous bonus part to this, which is probably going to make you cry. And I had to look these up. What are the 5 types of fronted adverbial?
Oh, crikey. No, not a chance. No. I mean, like, what, how, when, is it like that? Do you mean like that?
Kind of.
How? All right, go on then. You tell me.
So I could do 4 of these from memory, and I can't remember which one I forgot, but it's time, frequency, place, manner, and possibility.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. I don't think I'd have got all of them. Time, manner, yeah. Frequency, yeah. Place, yeah. I don't think I'd necessarily have got possibility, no. Okay.
No.
Oh, okay.
And time and frequency I always confuse, and I end up giving children's sheets with these on in columns if they need to use them, because it helps me too, which is maybe not best practice, but there we go. But I think giving them prompts to help is a good thing. Okay, this one's a bit tricky to do verbally, so
do I need to write it down?
It might help. So punctuate this sentence correctly.
Oh man. Okay, go on.
It's short. Sit down, the teacher shouted angrily.
Sit down. The teacher shouted. Oh, this is a dictation. Angrily. Okay. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want what I've got?
Yeah, go for it.
So, open inverted commas, sit down, exclamation mark, close inverted commas, the teacher shouted angrily, full stop.
I think I will let you have that, definitely, because I always explain this one by the punctuation before you close speech marks. It has to be in the warm, not out in the cold.
Oh, that's nice. That's a nice way of, that's nice. Yeah.
They remember it though, so that seems to work. Okay, we've got 2 more, and then we're done. So you're still with me at this point.
This is very stressful. Yeah, okay. I'm still on. I'm not quite on 100%, am I? But yeah, let's say I'm on about 80. Oh, I didn't get the bonus.
No, I think you've done pretty well so far. I am impressed. Okay, I've got a list of verbs here. You've got to identify the modal verbs.
Okay.
So the list of verbs I've got are run, must, skip, shout, ought, sing.
Oh, hang on. Again? Run, must, hang on. Run, must, skip, shout. Yeah.
Ought.
Yeah.
Sing.
Sing. Yeah. Okay. So I'd just pick out must and ought.
Yes. Spot on. Yeah. And what is a modal verb, Lucy?
Well, so it's interesting you were saying about you didn't know what a fronted adverbial was until you actually had to teach it. And I don't think I knew what modal verbs were until I had to teach them. And I used to make my students chant can, could, shall, should, will, would, may, might, must. Can, could, shall, should, will, would, may, might, must. We used to do like a little chant like that. To kind of get them in our head. So it's kind of it's a hard one to define, isn't it? Well, it's telling you about the main verb.
So it is auxiliary, I believe.
It's auxiliary. That's the word I'm after. Yeah, it's auxiliary to the main verb, and I suppose it's giving you an indication of how probable it is, or how likely it is to happen, or something like that.
Absolutely. I've always understood it as sort of verbs of possibility, which is probably not entirely accurate, but that's
that kind of thing. I do. My English teacher brain is slightly rusty, I have to say. Having been mainly living in a writing shed for 4 years, I'm out of touch with the real world. But yeah, okay. I do still remember. I still remember them, but it's hard necessarily to define them, isn't it? I suppose that's the thing.
Very much so. And then you've got one more, and then I promise that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. The last one is change this sentence from active voice to passive voice.
Now
this is year 6 we're kind of touching on now. I haven't actually taught in year 6, so I definitely had to look up.
Okay, so I'm changing it. It's inactive. I'm changing it to passive.
Yes.
Okay.
So your sentence is, it's nice and short. Fatima ate the apple.
Okay. I'm eating it. I'm writing it down. There we go. So I would change that to the apple was eaten by Fatima.
Yeah, well done.
There we go. That's how I would change. That's how I would change that.
Do you know what though? I did a teaching English as a foreign language course in lockdown because I was quite bored. And honestly, I would have thought that more of this would have stuck with me from that. And it's surprising how much of it is retained and how much of it is not.
Yeah. So what are the responses? You said you've tested this out on other people and had varying responses. How have other people responded to your fronted adverbials, so to speak?
So my my phase leader, what did she say to me? She said, let me just find her response quickly. Where did she put it? Where did she put it? Um, she sort of said to me that, oh gosh, Lucy, I'm going to fail your test. Oh, here it is. She said, most of my time has been in Key Stage 1, and every year for 5 years, I went to the Key Stage 1 SATS conference, and then we'll touch on this a bit more sort of later on in the show, where they went through the grammar stuff. That's not what she said. It was a different word, but it's stuff. For year 2, and I just remember them drilling us on the 4 sentence types and the difference between an exclamation sentence and an exclamation for emotion. I've got no idea what she's talking about here. And that she actually had to help one of our teachers with this last year. But it's so funny how you get worked up in grammar for your year group or whatever is hot for your year group, like in year 3 and 4, because she's year 3, I'm year 4. It's all about conjunctions and fronted adverbials. And then she said, I'm going to fail your test. I haven't been in Key Stage 2 long, which in fairness, she taught in Key Stage 1 up until this year where she's been put in year 3. So that was from her. My best friend said, I have a PhD and I did that without knowing what a fronted adverbial is. So thanks for that, Eleni. I had I messaged my friend of the show, Lawrence, who said who got 4 out of 5 on this. He struggled slightly with this subordinate clause one, and he said, I'll take that. My subject knowledge isn't completely rubbish. Not the word he used, but again. My brother was really interesting in his response, and this actually, and I can see that actually Fish 64 is listening in. So this response might interest them. My brother studied Spanish and Mandarin at university, and I ran this quiz past him as well. And he said, first of all, Lucy, I find the terminology really abstract. And then secondly, he said there are grammatical terms in there I've never heard of, and I studied languages. So I thought that was really interesting, the fact that he was sort of really taken aback. And he's younger than me, so he I don't know how much of this he did in school, but we're only 2 years apart. So he was not familiar with any of it. My parents, what did they say? My mum said, fail, can't do any. And finally, my friend who is a police officer said, had some choice words to me. There are a lot of question marks and expletives, being like, why are you asking me this? So a mixed bag, but also interestingly, what I find is that even teachers themselves, and I think this is kind of an interesting point to sort of, I mean, there'll be many interesting points throughout this to kind of start with, and I've actually got I printed out lots of fun documents, including the requirements for years 1 to 6. Just to kind of again see how much I knew. And there's actually a lot in terms of spelling, punctuation, and grammar that by year 6 are required for children to know. And I mean, I don't know if you found when you were teaching that you were able to retain all of this, or did you find that you were like me, cheekily looking things up when you needed to?
I think while you're teaching it, it stays there, but it's interesting that it drifts off. Or maybe it's my age, but it does start to drift off after a while if you're not using. It's the terminology, really, isn't it? It's not an understanding of how the language works. It's literally just the labeling, which is something that I'm very interested in, and to what extent it is useful to have that terminology to hand. But yeah, so it does drift off, doesn't it? That sort of thing. I find it drifts off after a while if you're not using it. Yeah.
And when you were teaching, because I find, and I've talked about this, actually waxed lyrical about this previously, I find that English teaching, I mean, we've kind of gone through various motions and things have been in and out of fashion. But with this current curriculum that we've had in place for a while, the idea of kind of, teaching grammar and having standalone grammar assessment and standalone kind of grammar lessons, it hasn't really gone anywhere, despite there being a lot of pushback on how valuable this really is in terms of children's writing, and how can it be that an abstract testing system is really giving us any kind of information that we actually need. And
Mm.
so when you were teaching, did you find that you sort of taught grammar as kind of part of what you just kind of was sort of intrinsically part of what you did, or that you were having to really home in on particular things to make sure that children reached the level that they needed to?
So uh, I think it depended on the class,
Mm,
um, and because obviously it wasn't being there isn't a a, a particular we don't have the grammar, punctuation, spelling. We don't have an exam on that in the same way that you do at the end of Key Stage 2, but there are you get SPAG points,
mm,
part of the other English exams. But I suppose I'd do whatever was needed for particular classes. I used to do a lot of back when I trained as a teacher, starters were very popular. I don't know if they're still. I don't know if they're still are, but I used to do quite a few little grammar starters and little things, a little bit like what we've just done actually, but as as more of a little fun quiz, or you'd put a sentence up on the board and they'd have to put the punctuation into it. And it was mainly Key Stage 3 that that we'd do a lot of that. I found we had to do a lot on tenses. Tenses used to hop about all over the place.
yeah.
And punctuation of speech was one that was all very very frequently we had to do some work tidying that up. But then in terms of like the terminology, I would bring in the terminology that was useful for them in terms of their analysis of literature. Really, that was where it was most useful. And I think it's interesting how how much the in the SATs there's a lot of banging on about the fronted adverbials and fronted what were the other ones? Fronted adverbials and fronted I can't remember. Anyway, but I always used to think that fronted conjunctions are so much more interesting, aren't they? Because it's about effect. That's about effect. When you've got a sentence starting with but, that's interesting. There we've got a turning point. We've got the whole text pivoting on this fronted conjunction. That's exciting. That's interesting for us to analyze, for us to look at in that particular way. And when you're teaching terminology in that context, it's useful because it's just giving children the tools they need to pick something apart and look at how it works and look at how the writers crafted it, and then for them to kind of experiment and play with it themselves and say, look how I've used a fronted conjunction in this story, Mister, to create this turning point here. And that's when it's fun and it's exciting. But if it's literally just can you circle the fronted conjunction, that for me is like why it's how it's used and why it's used and that's what's interesting, isn't it?
And I think that, as you put it there, context is everything. If we can put these things into context for children, rather than your writing will only reach this level if you include this, which I feel in
Mm-hmm.
part what teaching writing, certainly towards the tail end of primary, and certainly in year 6, that's kind of what it's become. That you'll get your writing
Mm-hmm.
back until you've gone through this list of ridiculous things, and this is kind of the thing I really wanted to touch on with you as an author. It detracts from the writing itself almost.
Yes, the quality of it absolutely does. Absolutely does. Because I think because you're trying to tick boxes and no writer is sitting there thinking I must include a an extended noun phrase and whatnot. No, we don't. You're not thinking like that when you're creating, because it's all about what the story needs and what the reader needs from the story. We're never thinking of it in terms of I must stick this in there, and so you end up with writing that's inevitably clunky, and children are feeling. I think they're feeling I've got to tick this box. I've got this checklist in my head. I must include one of these things. Then it's coming at it all from the wrong angle, isn't it? And it's sad because I think they're thinking, I've got that, and that's how I get it right. That's how I get it right. And putting my author's hat on for a moment. you know, I go into schools now, not as a teacher, I go into schools now as a children's author, and I'll to get children excited about books and about reading, about writing their own stories. And I'll say, you know, and what do we think are, what are the ingredients of a really good story? And we talk about that. And every so often, not all the time, but every so often you get this heartbreaking response, which is a child putting their hand up and saying something like an extended noun phrase, you know, because, you know, or, you know, prepositions, you know, they as if that's, you know, there's a heartbreaking confusion there, because they're thinking, you know, this is sophistication, to be, if my writing's really complicated and using lots of these, you know, lots of clauses in one sentence, and that kind of thing, and they're confusing these building blocks of grammar for good story writing, and I think that's heartbreaking, and I think that's what. So one of the things that prompted our particular discussion, Lucy, is a Katja Balin quote that was on Twitter. I think it must have been a couple of months back now, wasn't it? She was speaking at the HFL Edging Writing Conference, and she was saying, children are unable to find the stories they want to tell as they are so tangled in grammar. And this quote was taken. I don't have the rest of the speech and so on, but and I'd like to say, for the record, I think Katja Balin is an absolutely superb writer. I love her books. This quote was taken, and lots of people agreed with it, and then some people were saying, you know, but this is a rather narrow way of looking at the teaching of grammar and so on. But I suspect I suspect she may be coming at that from the same angle, from what I've just described, from that perspective of talking to children as an author and trying to get them excited about stories, and being met with this kind of this brick wall of grammatical terminology, and children sort of you know, unable to see beyond that. Yeah, so
most
that,
definitely.
yeah.
And speaking of authors, I should remind everybody that this show is still currently sponsored by John Catt Educational. Now, John Catt has an incredibly diverse catalogue of books available for you. So if you go log to johncattbookshop.com, you can have a look at so many different genres of books, certainly for all the teachers amongst us, all of us working in education. There, any kind of area you want to develop in terms of your CPD, go and have a look, because I guarantee you will find something. So make sure you pop along to johncattbookshop.com and have a look at all the things that it has to offer. Now, Lucy, coming back to you, I can just see that there's a tweet that has been posted at the top. We can see that Claire Ridsdale, I hope I haven't butchered, that's been in touch. I think it's really sad. Researchers, I think that's Danny Hill, has shown that through extensive research, grammar should be taught in context so that children, oh, I've just seen it disappear, so that children understand how it can be used to develop their authorial voice. Oh, I haven't heard that expression before. It's tragic that we have a testing system that reduced it to this. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think that's it's what we were just saying, wasn't it? That it's, you know, it's about, if we're teaching grammar in context, if we're teaching it analytically, you know, why has the writer written it like this? How else might they have written it? And for us to play about with that and experiment with it, and look at the effect of writing. And you know, when I'm teaching creative writing in schools now, we'll look at we'll write a paragraph, and then we'll think, well, how different does that feel if we now change that into the present tense? What's the effect? What's the effect of this? It's all about effect, isn't it? What's the effect of that?
Absolutely.
And what about if we change it from the third person to the first person? What happens then? What's the feeling of that? And what about if we take this cliffhanger that we've got at the end of this section? What if we use that to start the piece, and playing around with it and having fun with it, and it's I suppose it's language in action, isn't it? We want it to be language in action, and for children to feel that they have that, that it's their choice, that they can choose how to use language. I think that's a big part of it, that they're not just thinking, you know, how do I get this right? Because that is a straitjacket, isn't it? You know,
absolutely.
Have I got this right? Have I got these words right? And, you know, if any writer thought like that, then I think you'd give up. It's paralyzing, isn't it? So it's all about, is this what I want? Is this the effect I want to create? And what happens if I change it like this? And having that freedom, that playful approach to language, that's what we want. And yeah, language in context, how we're using it, why we're using it, what the purpose of it is, Yeah,
And I
sorry,
think
go
that's
on.
why, no, I was just gonna say, I think that's why having rich text to work from is so important, and mixing that
Mm.
up. I mean, we've been doing a lot of picture book stuff this year, which you might think, oh, for year four, that's a bit silly, but actually it's some of the best writing I've ever seen at
Oh,
that
I think
age.
picture books are for everyone. Good picture books are for, there's no age limit, I think.
Oh, most definitely. And the other thing, I was just thinking as you were talking about that, how can we do this? How can we do that? I found myself jumping up and down in an English lesson with year four recently. Can't even remember. I think it was to do with the end of a book we just read, Leon and the Place Between, which is kind of very magical, very lovely.
I
And
know that.
I was sort of saying, make it more dramatic, make it more dramatic. And then I was kind of looking at this, and I was thinking, but they don't know how to make it more dramatic. I'm jumping up and down, but going, be more dramatic, be more. And they're sort of, well, yeah, I haven't kind of equipped them with how to do that. I need to show them how. I need to model how to do that, and and I can kind of talk about language and kind of types of phrase and all the rest of it within that, and I can make that exciting, but I still have to teach them how to do it. I can't expect them to.
Yeah, and we can look at different examples of how writers can use language to create a sense of drama. That's what the study of language and literature is all about, isn't it? And then having a go ourselves, it's so empowering. And I think we've had a couple of tweets about saying it feels sad to focus on grammar for grammar's sake, full stop. Feels a little bit sad. It feels like a bit of a dead end, doesn't it? And that's not how it should feel. It should feel, yes, this is about empowerment with language. That's how it should feel. And we're not this, absolutely not saying, we shouldn't be teaching grammar, or we're teaching too much grammar. I think it's all about the how it's taught, and and giving it that context. And I think grammar, I actually went through the last year's SATs paper, and I circled, I've ticked the questions that I think are useful, and I have put across, I've marked their paper, and I've put a cross next to the questions which I think are not useful. But there are things like where it's helping children to understand that there is a form of English that is, formal standard English that will be appropriate in certain situations. And so that they know that there are, certain verb forms or certain ways of phrasing things that are seen as being formal standard English, and that will be appropriate and useful to them in certain educational and professional situations. That is empowering in itself, I think, for children to have that, to be equipped, to be like armed with formal standard English that they can whip out when they need to. I think that's a really, really, really good thing. And in a Twitter discussion I saw quite some time ago, actually, a teacher made a very good point that some people will sit on the anti-grammar side of the fence, and they'll say, we absorb it, what we need, the formal standard English that we need, and the grammar that we need, we absorb naturally through reading lots and through our interaction with adults. And I mean, that's true to an extent, isn't it? Of course, it's true to an extent, but that is not a level playing field, because not all children have lots of books at home. Not all children, children might have parents at home who don't speak English at all. Children might have parents at home who speak, a local sociolect, and that's what children, they speak themselves as well, and they won't necessarily have role models who are from whom they are naturally sort of assimilating this formal standard English. So I think it absolutely does need to be taught, and I think it's empowering to teach that to children. I think, yeah, it's about how we do it. So just coming back to what I was saying before, some of the questions I thought were useful versus some of the ones that I think were less useful.
I'm very intrigued by this because
right.
I had a look through the 2022 paper.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to see where you're going to go with this. You said you had the 23 paper in front of you.
I think I've got the 23 one. So I think, well, actually,
Okay.
So with your modal verbs one, for example, I think this is a very good question. So the question in the last year's SAT paper was tick the sentence that shows Lara is most likely to go swimming. And then you've got a choice of Lara will go swimming, Lara should go swimming, Lara might go swimming, Lara could go swimming. And what I like about that one is it's not circle the modal verb. It's about interpretation, and it's about understanding, and it's about understanding the subtle differences between she might go swimming, she could go swimming, she should go swimming, and she will go swimming. And that, I think, is useful. That's useful for children to understand that just by changing that little word, you can shift what is implied by that sentence. I think that's I think that's useful. So that got a tick from me, Lucy.
Okay.
Let me give you an example of something that didn't get a tick. So
this is oddly enough the one I'm more intrigued by.
yeah. So which two sentences contain a preposition? I'm like, there is a voice, a little tiny voice in the back of my brain going, why? Like what? Why? That's not useful. This is literally, the 2 seconds it takes me to tick the right boxes. It feels like a criminal waste of human hours upon the planet. Like, it's like, why do you want me to know? Whereas the modal verb question is useful. So because it's getting me to think about something, rather than just circle this. I like there's a question about how changing the position of the comma changes the meaning of the sentence. I rather like this one. So we've got as Fred ate the sweet orange, comma, balloons were given to the children. And then the other one is, as Fred ate the sweet, comma, orange balloons were given to the children. I like that one. I think that one's really nice. And they have to explain how the shifting the position of the comma changes the meaning of the sentence. And then because then, that's got implications for their own writing. They go, oh, commas do matter then. Oh, okay.
There was a brilliant thing that went around the internet a while ago. And I think also it gives me sort of eats, shoots and leaves. I don't know if you ever that kind of vibe. But also there was one that went around the internet a while ago, which was I like cooking, pets, and my family.
Yeah.
And then kind of at the bottom, use commas, don't be a psychopath kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that one.
Because without the commas, it makes you look like a psychopath.
Yeah, and then there's the one, I think we used to have a poster of this in one of my classrooms, and it was a sort of a big bad wolf kind of thing saying, let's eat children. And then underneath there's a punctuation, let's eat children. With the comma in it on the second one. So yeah, I think that's useful. That's showing, and again that's empowering. That's like, oh, I can control this sentence. I can control. I can make it mean something differently just by putting that comma in there, and that's exciting. It's exciting for me as an English teacher and as a writer. I think that's exciting, but I think kids find that exciting too, and fun. You can change the meaning of a sentence just by where you place the comma in it.
But it's interesting as well. I mean, I recently had a conversation with the guys who founded Spelling Shed. I don't know if you're familiar, and they were talking a lot to me about etymology and things like that, and how and also how just knowing certain root words, how just by knowing a particular root word, you can then the words that can kind of come from that, and teaching kids how to understand that you actually know more than you think you do. I think that there's a sort of a dryness that has entered into the teaching of these things, and just listening to you talk and listening to the animation in your voice has actually already sort of inspired me to go, okay, how can I do this a bit differently? How, instead of kind of whinging about having to teach this stuff, okay, it's in the curriculum, therefore we need to do it, but how can we do it? And I think from what I've taken away from this so far is context is everything. But also that sentence example you gave, what was it again with oranges and balloons?
With the oranges, hang on, I've got to find it again now. Oh, it was the sweet. So yes, as Fred ate the sweet orange, comma, balloons were given to the children. I mean, it's a bit weird, but anyway, it's also it's a terrible sentence, but it's still quite fun. And then the second one is, as Fred ate the sweet, comma, orange balloons were given to the children. It's cool because because the word orange changes from a noun to an adjective. I think I like that. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And sweet changes from an adjective to a noun. I like that one. I think it's fun.
And I think, and again, you could use that to unpack lots. I mean, that sentence in itself, you've just shown that it unpacks lots of things just by moving that comma. Yes, it's changed the meaning of the whole sentence, but it's changing word types, words that can be both, nouns and adjectives, depending on how you use them. That kind of stuff is quite fun. Whereas if you're just saying, right, an adjective describes a noun, it's really okay, great.
Yeah, and it's not, it's about, it's so hard, isn't it? When the whole curriculum all the way through is jam packed, isn't it? And I do feel like Key Stage 2 particularly, there's a terrible pressure in the curriculum, and it must feel impossible to teach all of the things that you're expected to teach within the time you're expected to teach them. And so I think because of that, or possibly because of that, people feel it's almost sort of saving time to, perhaps some people feel we'll just do what we need to do to get them ready for the SATs. But perhaps because of that, you can end up with a slightly kind of a drier approach to it. But the other thing I think that's so important, and I'm sure that most teachers don't do that at all. They're trying to find a way of making it fun. But I think because the curriculum is so jam-packed, I do think everything within it has to earn its place, doesn't it? It has to be. When we're talking about the teaching of grammar at Key Stage 2, we're thinking, is this useful? Is this practical? Is it knowledge that is valuable for its own sake? Is this going to be something they're going to be able to deploy in their future years in education or in the wide world beyond? Or of course, in the case of many other things that they'll be learning, is it enriching in some other way? Is it stimulating? Is it going to stimulate their imagination? Is it going to encourage them to be more questioning or to see the world differently? So these are the things that we have to ask ourselves when we're looking at what things, the topics that we cover that have earned, are they earning their place? Are they earning their place within the curriculum? And so I think, I think we have to, I just think, we have to look at which aspects of grammar do that. Which aspects of grammar, because I don't think all these aspects of grammar do that. I don't think all these aspects of grammar that are here in this paper, it's like it's just sort of gone a bit far, isn't it? It's like circle the relative pronoun. This has got a big cross from me in this paper, Lucy. Circle the relative pronoun. It's the naming of parts that feels so meaningless to me.
See again, I think I couldn't confidently tell you what that is.
I had to sit there for ages and work it out.
That's not he, him, they, is it? No.
Yes, it's that no. It's
no.
It's no. Those are pronouns. So relative pronouns.
Those are pronouns. Yeah.
Relative pronouns are, so Mr. Herbert, who made the discovery. So who is your relative pronoun? Or a large collection of gold and silver, which is known as the Staffordshire hoard. So we got which, we got who, we got that.
That's the one.
They're not interesting words, for the love of God. They're not interesting words. It's not. It's just. It's there in a very sort of functional, very dry sort of capacity. It's not. There's nothing fun. Let's play with our relative pronouns. Sorry.
But also we don't. I mean, it seems like becomes a very laboured sentence then, almost, doesn't it? I don't feel like we don't really write. I mean, I don't think I write like that, and I certainly don't. I don't sort of know anyone who speaks like that, unless they're being very dramatic or over the top.
No, I don't know. Absolutely, I think. And I think that's part of it, with all these conjunctions and this feeling that you're going to get, and particularly probably some really conscientious kids who are thinking, oh, I must cram that in, and I must make sure I've got one of those, and I must do one of these, and you end up with these very, very convoluted, clunky sentences. Yeah, absolute nonsense, and with their sort of their wow words crammed in there as well, which are
shoehorned in, isn't it? And honestly, I've seen some spectacular. Yeah, it really is. It's kind of like they have sort of. Kind of cranked it in there, and you think, bless you, and I love you for trying. Yeah. But this is actually unreadable.
Yeah, it is. And I think Michael Morpurgo made a very I beg your pardon, Michael Rosen. Sorry, it's late. Michael Rosen made a very, very good point about that on Twitter not long ago, talking about grammar and how you end up with these, if you're trying to do all these things, how you end up with these very these clunky sort of unwieldy sort of sentences. And it, it made me think of, so there's a Skellig is a book that I taught at to year 7 for years and years, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, brilliant book by David Almond, and I'm sure most of your listeners will know it very well. And it's a very, very good example to show children that the power of the simple sentence, because that's how it's written. It's written in these or not exclusively simple sentences, but a lot of it is written in simple sentences. And it's a really, really nice tool to use, I think, to show, we don't have to be creative, putting all these clauses in there in order to create writing that's effective. So I think it's useful to look at all sorts of examples of writing.
And sentence types,
Yeah.
certainly. I mean, I certainly have talked to Year 4 at great length about, it is okay to stick a short sentence in from time to time, because I find that sometimes even these power of 3 sentences I've taught them to use have become so, I mean, we're talking kind of 3 lines worth of sentence, and I've kind of thought, oh God, I've created monsters here, because it's almost gone too far. And I wish I kind of had some examples here with me. Unfortunately, I don't. But some, I mean, just it's kind of describing a thunderstorm, and it's so beautifully described, but in a kind of 3 line sentence. The thunder rattled the windows noisily, the lightning kind of flashed in the kind of about 5 words to describe the lightning, and I was shaking in my bed like a leaf on a cold day. It's kind of
Yeah. Oh,
long.
yeah. Each one's got its own simile, and yeah. Oh.
But I just wanted to kind of come back to something that you already mentioned, but also Fish64 has talked about, and I can just see the tweet posted up here. How a lot is useful, and I think we've already sort of touched on this. A lot of this grammar is useful, and it's, on the one hand, we have laughed and joked about the fact that there are aspects of this that perhaps are a bit silly, and perhaps we don't need to be teaching 8, 9, 10, 11, even 12-year-olds some of this stuff, particularly when, and you will have had cases like this when you were teaching, when you've still got kids who are struggling to use full stops, capital letters, basic conventions.
Yeah.
And I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with you in that I do think that it is important to teach particular writing conventions, that there are certain occasions for certain types of writing. I mean, a professional email, as it is now, because people don't write letters sadly anymore, is not going to read in the same way as a narrative. And it's important that children can distinguish between the two, and understand that the language, you're not going to use your lovely sort of descriptive language in an email to your boss, but you perhaps are going to in a narrative. So I think those,
I'm shaking like a leaf on a cold day.
Yes,
sir, dear sir. Oh.
It always reminds me of that episode of Friends where Joey's trying to help Monica and Chandler adopt I think it's adopt a child or something like that, and he sort of has changed every word using a thesaurus, and the heart is described as like a large aortic pump, I think, or something like that. But,
yeah, exactly. Yes,
it's important for these things, and so I do think that there is certainly I mean, part of the reason we're teachers, and and this is such a large part of the curriculum. I just wonder if kind of it could be scaled down a bit in terms of the technical stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And in terms of what's most useful, and I think what we said about how there are children still floundering with full stops and commas, and there we are trying to teach fronted adverbials and whatnot, and it's just it's about priorities, I think, really, isn't it? Because what we want is for them to be going to secondary school, being able to write and fluently, and to be able to use that kind of basic punctuation correctly, and spelling as well. Actually, a tweet that I did earlier this evening, and someone replied to it saying, well, they'll have forgotten it all by year 7 anyway. And But you know, I'd actually, it'd be really interesting to hear from some secondary secondary English teachers to see, you know, has this, do they think it's changed in recent years? Has the level of understanding of grammar at when children are coming in year 7, has it improved because of this? I would be really, really interested to know, because in my years of teaching, I hadn't yet seen any impact. And you would have children coming in year 7, not, you know, having completely forgotten what a noun is and a verb, and you feel like you have to start from scratch again. And you're, you know, with a lot of the children, you know, you they haven't got some of the punctuation, some of the basic punctuation in place either. And you think, you know, what are the priorities here? How, honestly, how important are your relative whatsits and your and prepositions and all that sort of thing? You know, isn't it better to focus on the on getting the basics absolutely secure, and having fun, you know, having fun with the rest of it, and exploring and playing and getting them excited about language, and feeling empowered with language in that way. And you know, and maybe the rest of it, maybe a lot of these things aren't that useful, you know. It's or you know, aren't that useful to be able to apply the labels. That is not a useful skill, to be able to apply the labels to these sentences. That's not,
definitely not.
you know, that's not useful. But you know, I think I know we have some MFL teachers who are part of your listenership. Is that even a word? Listenership? What do I mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you do. Yeah, that's perfect. You're not losing your mind, I promise you.
So we have some MFL teachers, and I also would be interested to hear their perspective on it, because having for children to be equipped with some of the basic grammar terminology must surely be useful as they're coming into learning other languages, and a lot of the grammar terminology for me, was new to me at secondary school when I started learning French and then Latin. And actually Latin, I learned a lot of my grammar stuff that I learned through Latin, none of it through English. But you know, I was part of that generation where it wasn't in the curriculum at all. And we were expected just to assimilate all of it. But I think, but it is useful for learning languages, isn't it? To be able to have the right terminology, to, you know, to know what you're doing with learning a new language. I think that's very true.
Oh, most definitely. And also something I was going to ask you that sort of only really occurred to me when we were talking is, you know, I know we've kind of joked about the terminology and kind of having to look stuff. I look things. Oh, have we lost? No, I'm
Sorry,
back now.
I lost you for a minute. You're back. Yes, sorry. Can you say that last bit again? I beg your pardon.
Sorry. I think someone was trying to very rudely call me in and interrupt proceedings this evening. uh, Surely everyone knows I'm on the radio at this time. They don't. But I'll call whoever it is back. I think it's a friend of mine who's actually on holiday in Morocco, so I hope she's all right. But anyway, that's completely irrelevant.
Oh, crikey.
What was I even talking about? This is what happens. I go off on tangents.
You said no. Yes, you said you thought of something while we were talking. Go on.
I did.
Before it goes, quick.
And I know it's like balloons. It's like I've always described my brain as kind of a balloon that I'm trying to grab hold onto the string whenever, or my thoughts are kind of I'm chasing after them constantly. But this one I do remember. So we're kind of joking about having to look stuff up, sort of joking about not being able to retain all of this stuff. But do you think maybe there is also an aspect amongst teachers more generally, where they're thinking, oh gosh, you know, I can't remember half this stuff, so you know, I'll just kind of teach it in sort of the easiest way possible, or maybe some of it I just kind of, you know, will just maybe I just don't have to kind of bother with that because I'm not entirely confident with it myself. Do you think there's any kind of sort of aspect of that where people sort of shy away and hide away from it? Maybe more so in primary school, because secondary English teachers are probably more au fait with these things.
I don't know. I mean, so I think a lot of the grammatical stuff and a lot of the terminology, I sort of taught myself on the on the job as I was training to be an English teacher, and as I picked up other parts of English teaching as well. So when I was teaching a language and literature A level, where the requirement for the terminology was that much more I suppose much more detailed in terms of the grammatical terminology that children were they weren't children, they were A-level students, but the students were expected to be able to apply. And I had to teach myself, and it was that thing of when you're literally you're one step ahead of the of the children that you're teaching. You're one step ahead of each lesson. And I had to do that. But I did have a colleague who sort of threw her hands up in the air, and she was like, well, I was never taught any of this stuff. And it was as if that was a full stop to it. And I did feel like saying, you can Google.
And there's a thing called self-development as a teacher. It's like we're never the finished product, and if that's your mentality, then maybe this is not the job for you.
But and there are textbooks, and there are all sorts of wonderful books where you can find out what these things are and how they work. But possibly, I don't know, possibly some people, and it's going to be more likely that it's people of my generation, I think, who, and we weren't taught these things at school. But that certainly doesn't necessarily mean that we can't teach them ourselves, that we can't find them out to teach them, and it's not. Much of it isn't. It's not that it's difficult. It's just sort of finding, knowing what the right words are for the right sorts of things. It's some of it's confusing. I think some of it's dull.
Yes,
as we've covered. Some of it's dull. Some of it's confusing. It's confusing. Grammar can be confusing because I think, as we said, sort of right near the beginning, things can be more than one. Things can be more than one thing.
Yeah, and language is rich, and it has changed, and I think again, certainly what you've said this evening in terms of kind of context is everything as well, and being able to play around with it. I think there is and I certainly feel in talking to you this evening that I just need to let go a little bit, and kind of there's a sort of almost I've become obsessed with the idea that there sort of needs to be a kind of a stiffness and a rigidity to this, but there actually doesn't. I mean, you need to kind of work it in, but it can be done in a way that doesn't bore everyone to tears.
I think so. I think when I think what we want children, when it comes to language, what we want children to have is a sort of a sense of agility, that they can use language in all sorts of different ways, in all sorts of different situations, for all sorts of different purposes, and that they have that that confidence with language, that they can change direction with it, and they can use it in different ways depending on the context, the situation that they're in. And that, I think, is what we want. We want, rather than feeling, yes, I know what a relative clause is, tick that box. We want them to have agility and confidence, because it is that opens doors educationally, and it's that opens doors in the big wide world beyond school as well, of course, that if they can be agile and confident with language, and making the language work for them, and to have that confidence. I can use language in a way that works for me. I want to make a sentence that does this. I want to write an email that will impress someone, and to think about what you to think about what
I wondered where you were going with that email. I want to write an email that won't get me fired.
I want to write an email that will offend someone. I want to write a tweet that will make people angry.
I want to write my exit email, the exit email of all exit emails. Tell my boss exactly what I think of him in very precise terms. No, I don't recommend.
It's wielding language, and to have, and for this is what we want for children, to have that confidence. And if grammar is taught in the wrong way, it makes us scared of language, because it makes us feel we're frightened of getting things wrong. And one of the things that I always say to children when I'm doing creative writing workshops in schools, I say, be bold with language. And if there isn't a word that you can think of, then try making one up. What is the word? You know, what's the word that you're after here? I'm not saying, you know, we should have just encouraged them to go around making making up words all the time, but
Well, it worked for Roald Dahl.
but
So.
well, yeah, well, and Shakespeare, you know, but so. You know, the word that I ended up using in something the other day was, you know, bigness. The big, which sounds like an awful Trumpism. Is it a Trumpism? I hope it isn't. But like the bigness of something, because that just, there wasn't another word that did the job, and I ended up using that word bigness. And a child said to me, "You know, is that a real word?" And I was like, "I don't really, no, not really. It's not really. It's not a formal word, but it works in this sentence. It works in this sentence." And I think, you know, when I talk about what being a writer really is, I say to children, it is the job of finding the perfect words to pin things down on the page. That's what writers do. That's their job. We work very, very hard to find the perfect words to pin things down on the page. And it's an immensely satisfying thing to do. And it's an incredibly fun thing to do. But you do need to feel that you have language at your fingertips, and that's the feeling that we want children to have, that language is there for them to have fun with, to make choices with, to play with, to experiment with, until they find the words that are perfect for them to create the sentence they need to create in that moment.
Oh, most definitely. And the next question I have for you is kind of the role of, and this comes up in a lot of shows that I've done recently, and it's of course relevant in the ever-changing world, is, you know, with technology increasing, with children being able to use sort of spelling and grammar checking software and things like that, and of course you've got, you know, the likes of ChatGPT, all of that are in the mix too. I still think, and I still feel as a teacher, and I imagine that as an author you feel the same way, that um, you know, this creativity and this idea of teaching children to write and having these different is still really, really important, because as much as, you know, this tech is available, I don't think that can ever take away from, as you say, that whole idea of playing with things and kind of, you know, maybe coming up with words and talking about different contexts and things like that. I hope that this whole way of teaching and way of learning about reading, writing, using words doesn't sort of disappear, because I mean, I don't think it will yet. I still think that this is important, but I just wonder if you have any concerns about the roles of technology and stifling imagination, perhaps.
I don't know. I mean, the whole AI and chat GPT, that chat
That
thing,
thing, that
and
chat thing.
AI, you know, I think it's terrifying. You know, I think a lot of people are terrified by it. I think a lot of people in teaching are finding it intimidating, in terms of, you know, we always there's particular software that we'd relied on for coursework, to check the authenticity of coursework and to make sure, and you know, I'm a little bit out of that loop now, but I know a lot of colleagues have concerns about how that all works with oh, are you still there?
Yeah,
Oh,
still got
good.
you.
Sorry, I thought I'd dropped away. Something strange has happened to my screen. Okay, never mind. As long as you can hear me, that's fine.
Yeah, all good.
So yeah, I think that there's that fear. I suppose that's to do with plagiarism, essentially, isn't it? That to do with students using these things, and teachers and examiners and so on not being able to assess accurately enough how much is now written by a student, and how much might they have had some some artificial intelligence help with. So that's one aspect of it. I think I think it's I think we can't think that it's going to replace the necessity for people to be able to you know, to shape words in their own way. It can't, can it?
I
Please tell
hope
me it.
not. And this is,
Please tell me
well,
it can't.
I
Um,
sincerely hope not. And I've kind of sort of had this question answered in various ways. And I think that there that these skills are still important. And as you say, formulating words and different contexts and all the rest of it. I think um, there are still, like, I've put things into Chat GPT and it's come back and I sort of thought, I don't quite like the phrasing of that, or it's not quite right. And certainly with spelling and grammar checking software as well, of which various varieties are available. Um, and I've said this before, I'm not a fan of the Oxford comma, and I've often had it suggest to put an Oxford comma in, and I will still take it out because to me, having and there already does the job. Some
Yeah,
people might disagree.
I quite like an Oxford comma, actually. Maybe we should do a whole show just on the Oxford comma. I
had
quite
thought
like
about
the
it.
clarity of the separation. I enjoy them. I used to be very anti, Lucy. I used to be very anti, but I do quite like them now. They've won me over, honestly.
Okay. Those of you listening in, I can see Mark Cratchley's in, who is very much a friend of TTR. He's going to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down to let me know if he's an Oxford comma fan. And Fish64 and Mr. Mo Naguib, I think that is. Please let me know if I've butchered that. I'm really sorry. You can let us know with a thumbs up or a thumbs down whether you are an Oxford comma fan or
Yeah.
not. And
But
those of you
almost.
listening back can also let us know. Sorry, Lucy, carry on.
Yeah, no, yes, please. I think we should definitely do a vote on this. But I think what you were saying
Cratchley is a
about
fan. Cratchley is a
oh
fan.
yeah, look at
He's
that.
with you. He's with you, Lucy.
That was a big thumbs up. Yeah, no, in terms of things like the software that checks spellings and all this sort of thing, it's they're tools, they're useful tools, but we still need to have our own understanding, in order to use those tools appropriately, because there are plenty, obviously there are plenty of words that spell check can't correctly identify within the context, and it's we can't rely on these things. And then people are going to tell me, well, we will be able to soon, it's getting better all the time. We'll be able to rely on it soon. But I still think, that surely there is no substitute for the human brain being able to distinguish, in terms of the subtlety, the context, the layers of meaning that we can create with words. So my feeling is, which may be a somewhat Luddite one, who knows, but my feeling is that these things can absolutely never substitute our own knowledge and understanding of language.
Oh, I absolutely and I wholeheartedly agree. And speaking of knowledge and understanding, a reminder once again that this show is sponsored by John Catt Educational. And if you want to go and have a browse across the plethora of books that exist in the John Catt catalogue, then johncatbookshop.com is where you should head, and you can find anything and everything to help enhance your CPD, including books all about the teaching of language, the teaching of English, teaching of writing. All of these things are there for you to browse through, along with a whole host of other things. So please do pop yourself over to have a look, and I'm almost guarantee you will find something that will suit you. So yeah, it'll be great stuff. So yeah, the technology side of things, I think you're right. I think those tools rely on you still being able to commit words to paper or screen in this case to begin with. I mean, without that, then there's nothing for it to assess. That I kind of hadn't really, in a rather silly way, I hadn't really considered that, because it has nothing to work with otherwise. So
homophones, that's the word I was grappling for before, Lucy. Homophones, that spell check can't distinguish between when one homophone is appropriate and another is not. They can't do that, can it? Yet.
Yet I missed a trick with a question here, because I should have been, because there's homophones, homonyms, and then I think there's a third.
Graphic.
Homograph. No.
What are they called? Homographs. Yeah.
Yeah. So homophones sound the same, spelled different. Yes.
Yes, like hair on your
Hair.
head and hair running in the field. Yeah.
So sound the same, spelled different. Homonym is sound different, spelled the same. Tear and tear. Yes. No. Oh gosh.
Is it?
I don't know. No, I
See,
don't think that's right. Oh gosh,
no,
I need to look it
I
up.
think I would call that a homograph.
Maybe that's
Like,
homograph. Hold on.
uh,
Homonym. I'm actually looking this
yeah,
up.
go on, look it up.
Homonym. Each of two or more words having the same spelling or pronunciation but different meanings or origins.
No, there you go. There you go then. You're
So what?
correct.
So okay. So then, what's homograph?
Well, maybe I've made that up. It's a bit.
No, because I thought no, it's here. Hold on, this is real. This is real time research happening here. So homograph, each of two or more words spelled the same but not necessarily pronounced the same, having different meanings or origins.
Yeah. Well, it's very similar to homonym, really, then, isn't it? Yeah.
So they give minute and minute.
Yeah.
No, hang on, that's not right. Oh, bat, as in a type of sports equipment or an animal. Okay, right, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Oh,
But they are pronounced the same.
yes. Oh, yeah, oh, yes. But
Yes, or like desert and desert, to desert someone, the verb to desert,
I
not
remember
the
this
pudding.
by dessert being stressed backwards.
Well, the pudding.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, dessert. Yeah, the pudding. Yeah,
That's genuinely how I remember the difference. And I think there are lots of there are lots of these funny things that you can you know, none of which are particularly sort of useful ways of remembering things. But and then there was a brilliant one for palindromes, which was evil rats on No Star Live reads the same and makes complete nonsense, but it reads the same both ways.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I like that sort of thing. I used to again, I'm thinking back in my teaching years now, and I'm thinking about. Remember, I mentioned that chant. I used to get the kids to chant modal verbs.
Yeah.
Just to remember what sort of thing we're talking about. But I had a chant for onomatopoeia as well. So there you go. Here's that's a bit of linguistic terminology / literary terminology, depending on what you're analysing and why. But so onomatopoeia is it's a lovely word, isn't it?
I know what it is. I can't spell onomatopoeia.
And kids love using them, and it's that's a nice example of a bit of empowering terminology that the kids can play with, and that they can use and in their own writing, and they can spot them in other people's writing. They can talk about the effects of them. But to remember how to spell it. My classes we always used to go onomatopoeia, onomatopoeia, all together now.
Oh, that's brilliant. Do you know what? That has actually changed my life.
There you go. If we've achieved one thing this evening, Lucy, perhaps it's just simply the spelling of onomatopoeia, which is a lovely word.
Well, Tom HB recently made me relive a slightly terrible experience. I had to, for my PGCE equivalency test for the English side of it, I had to spell entrepreneurial under pressure, and it still haunts me to this day. So Tom HB quite recently thought it would be hilarious to make me do it live on a show, and I managed to do it because he said the thing he helped me with was think French to begin with, and then he actually kind of probably babysat me through it, to be fair. But I got there. But it's little things like that, because spelling under pressure is a terrible thing. This is why spelling tests are awful.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I do rely on every now and then. There are words where I just I set off words like maneuver, and I'll set off boldly into the writing of that word, and then about halfway through, I will right click.
I'd be like, no, I gave it a good go. I tried.
I've got lost in the vowels.
Yeah, but the important thing is that the good intention was there, Lucy, and you gave it a good crack.
Well, but there are little tricks. All of these words, there are little tricks that we can use to help us remember it. It probably wouldn't take me very long, would it, just to sit down for once, just to sit down, look at the spelling of it, and teach myself a little trick to remember it. But I gave that as an example to show that I do occasionally rely on artificial intelligence for a little bit of help with these particular things. But it's using the tool rather than allowing the tool to shape my actual thoughts.
No, and I think that's the kind of that's the I suppose what I would feel is the right way around, if you like. I mean, that's a matter of opinion, I guess, but I mean, I'm in agreement with you in that I think that that's certainly the way around I would view it, and I hope that it stays that way around. But things are changing all of the time, so you never know.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I just want to, before we sort of, before I let you go for the evening and allow you to escape your shed, although I'm sure it's very nice in there, I'm sure you're very cozy.
It's
I don't,
very, it's
I,
very cozy, actually. Yeah.
and you don't really want to trudge back up the garden.
It's very
Just,
wet. It's still raining out there.
oh no, so you're not going anywhere. So I've got you for a bit longer at least. I dug up a because I love to go down something called a research rabbit hole, which is something that on this show we kind of dip in and out of quite a lot, and I sort of traverse the internet and I find all kinds of fun things. And actually, speaking of our friend Michael Rosen, this is something that he put me onto because this actually predates my teaching career. This particular report that I'm about to refer to. So this is the Bew report from 2011 that kind of looked into assessment and all the rest of it, and the sort of the assessing of children and what we kind of do with this data and all the rest of it. But the bit that stuck out to me is the bit about writing, and I just want to read it to you and see what you think, because I think this sort of, in summarizing kind of the teaching of grammar and everything we sort of talked about this evening, I wonder how you feel about this. So one of the recommendations on the back of this, now bearing in mind this was 2011, this was a while ago, but I don't think anything really has been, and I had a hunt around, has really been kind of written or updated since on this. But we'll go with this version for now. So, on the back of this report, it said, we recommend that writing composition should be subject only to summative teacher assessment. We believe this will encourage pupils to develop and demonstrate a broad range of writing skills over the course of Year 6 while avoiding the perverse incentives of the current system. And that is a direct quote. While maintaining national standards is vital, we do not believe that this should come at the expense of promoting creativity. We believe teachers should assess widely across a range of genres and writing styles, and that this approach should give children more opportunities than the current system does to write in a wide range of ways. We recommend that a teacher assessment of writing composition should be subject to external moderation. I don't know how I feel about that bit. We recognise there are some elements of writing where there are clear right or wrong answers, which lend themselves to externally marked testing. And they do recommend that a test of these essential writing skills is developed. Writing assessment should be through a mixture of both testing and summative teacher assessment. And due to its importance, we believe that teachers' own professional assessments of writing and composition should always form a greater part of the overall writing statutory assessment result. So there's quite a lot to digest there, but I just wonder your thoughts on that.
Right, so the gist of that then is that extended writing compositions in various different, writing in different ways for different purposes, different audiences and so on, should be assessed purely by classroom teachers. Or then it added the bit, didn't it, to do with external moderation as well?
Yeah, that.
But essentially the message of that is not under exam conditions. Is that what that was?
I mean,
that's what that was saying.
Yeah, I think they mean the sort of in class kind of, sort of on an ongoing basis, teacher writing should, or teachers writing children's writing should be continual assessment. But that's just, forgive me, but is that not kind of part of teaching generally? You're constantly assessing in one way or another, even if it's not sort of, ticks and crosses and markings of tests. It's an ongoing, continual journey, whatever you want to call it, but it's always happening in one way or another.
Yeah, no, I think to write an extended piece, and children at GCSE are required to do this. And I always think it's hellish that they have to write a descriptive or a narrative piece, and they're being tested on being able to write creatively, essentially, to be able to write creatively, powerfully, to engage a reader, to be able to create a sense of atmosphere, to be able to create tension, to create that kind of to be able to structure a piece of narrative within exam conditions. And I think it's very, very hard thing to do.
But cold writing as
Un- un-
well is a
Under
daft
that
thing.
kind of pressure. Yeah,
Anything cold,
it
but
is.
also I thought about this recently because I was chatting to a year six teacher, because I had to do some writing assessments, and she said, no, don't do a cold write. I said, well, but how do I, how do I then assess if I've then kind of scaffolded? She said, Lucy, but think about any aspect of life or any area of life where you would be asked to cold write and then hand something in to be looked at, whether it's in the case of you as an author, you don't just kind of dump something on paper, hand it in, and be done. It's,
Mm.
even with emails that we write, I rarely ever send the first draft. I mean, depending on, and I've learned my lesson through life to not always send the first draft.
Yeah, haven't we all? Yeah.
But it's kind of things like, you can assess children's capability, but giving them that scaffolding, I think, is increasingly, well, it's, I'm understanding the importance of that and modeling and showing them, and again, not stripping them of that confidence, because when in life are they not going to have, I mean, obviously they're not going to have kind of
Mm.
teacher scaffolding throughout life, but when in life are they going to have to just coldly put something to paper? It's never,
Mm.
unless under these silly exam conditions, as
And
we.
it's in exam conditions. Back to when I'm talking to children as an author rather than as a teacher. I which has, by the way, made me reflect upon, retrospectively, my teaching practice over the years as well. But because we did have to get them to write in that sort of way, because they had to do it for GCSE. They had to have some practice doing it throughout their secondary school careers, and yet now as an author, I find myself talking to children and telling them about the value of daydreaming, and how important it is to give your ideas time to kind of to settle, give your ideas time to simmer away quietly, let them bubble away, and experiment with, we're going to add a different ingredient in. Let's change the setting. What happens if we change it from daytime to nighttime? What happens if we change the season of this story? What happens if we add in an animal character? What happens if we change it from the present day to 100 years ago? And we spend some time sort of playing with these things. We do a bit of research. We look at some artwork. We look at photographs of our setting. And we're feeding our imagination, and we're giving an idea space. Ideas need space. Ideas need time to grow when you're not just staring them in the face. Like, they very often won't do anything at all if you're staring at them. And we all know that, all of that dreadful kind of blue screen feeling of looking at a blank piece of paper, and the dread of the clock ticking, and ideas do not thrive in these particular
No.
situations, do they? And I get ideas. I'll sit there. I'll be trying to write something, and ideas won't be coming. And I'll get up and I'll start doing a bit of housework, or I get ideas when I'm brushing my teeth, or I get ideas when I'm doing the washing up, and there's a part of the brain that needs to feel that it is not under pressure, and in order to come up with ideas that are really beautiful and interesting and exciting and fresh. And so yeah, absolutely, the whole idea of I realize some of it boils down to practicality, and how we assess people, how we measure
Yeah.
a child's skill with language and so on. There are so, as we all know, that many of the most worthwhile things in life are not measurable. But if we're having to measure a child's skill with language, that it is often assessed in those kind of quite sort of clinical conditions. And I
Yeah.
know now that that my brain does not do well in those sorts of situations, and I encourage children to really take their time with writing, and to allow, not just minutes, but we're talking about days, for ideas to truly find themselves.
Oh, most definitely. And I think that's a very important thought to actually end on this evening, because the I think there is so much pressure in the curriculum, and we talk about this a lot on Teachers Talk Radio. It comes up time and time again that, we as teachers, whether it's primary or secondary, are kind of squeezed in every which way. And where we can, I think it is important to let ideas flow and use different mediums and explore that a bit more. And of course, as we've said, it is important to um, make sure we are teaching certain conventions and all the rest of it. But I think that it's the fun part and the ideas part and the kind of the playing part, because I think, as you say again, that play aspect is also missing, I think, for a lot of us, and being able to actually give us give ourselves permission as teachers. And I'm a great one for sort of not giving myself permission. And I feel that this conversation with you, Lucy, has kind of sort of changed my thoughts on that. And I thought, okay, there's
Oh,
room here to kind of do things a bit differently. No, I think it's been, and this is why these conversations and why we do shows like this, because in having a positive impact on me, I really hope that it's having positive impact on those listening in and those who will listen back to this show at a later date, which they will. So I think it's been really insightful and really, really interesting, and we've talked about a lot of different things. So I really appreciate you coming on this evening. I really appreciate you making the time in your little writing shed, and I still have a lovely image of you kind of cozied up in there. And I hope that as and when you do make your way back up the garden, that it's not too horrifying for you. And
yeah, I've forgotten my
please be
umbrella, unfortunately.
please be careful in the dark, because well, if nothing else, because I hope for you to come back at a later date, and maybe we'll talk about a different topic.
Oh, I'd
So
love to. I'd love to.
all that remains for me to say, Lucy, is thank you so much, and have a lovely rest of the week, and hopefully speak to you again another time.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Lucy. And thanks everyone listening.
Thank you. So that was a lovely chat with Lucy Strange. I hope that it has been as interesting and insightful for you as it was for me. Um, this show will be available to listen back to for up to 30 days on X itself, but also via all your chosen podcast platforms relatively soon. So do look out for it if you have missed out this evening. I will be back in 2 weeks' time. Next Tuesday, you have got the lovely Hannah Wilson, who is admin today. So thank you for that, Hannah. Hannah, I'm not actually sure what you're talking about next week. Am I putting you on the spot if I ask you?
Slightly. I'm trying to accost my family whilst I'm here to come on and do another In the Family show.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, well, I'm sure that you will come up with something brilliant. You always do. So, looking forward to that next week. In the meantime, those of you that are on Easter holidays, I think most of you are. Have a lovely rest of the time. Relax, enjoy, eat all that chocolate, and I will talk to you soon.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.